Months after the fleet returned from Zorath, life on Earth began to settle into a new rhythm. The mission had left its mark on everyone involved, and its lessons continued to shape decisions in governments, military circles, and communities around the world. For Rachel Monroe, the experience became a turning point in her career. She was invited to speak at international conferences, where leaders sought her insights on diplomacy and ethics in interstellar relations. Her calm demeanor and sharp mind earned her respect even from those who had once doubted her. Rachel used these platforms to push for change. She argued that humanity needed better systems for evaluating alien requests for help. "We can't afford to act out of emotion or fear," she said during one speech. "Every decision must be based on facts, not assumptions. If we're going to step into another species conflict, we need to know the full story, no matter how uncomfortable it may be." Her words struck a chord with many. Governments began drafting stricter protocols for responding to extraterrestrial signals. Scientists and linguists worked together to create tools for analyzing alien messages more thoroughly before committing resources. Military leaders, too, embraced reforms aimed at improving intelligence gathering and ensuring transparency in future missions. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress, a step toward avoiding the mistakes made on Zorath. Ethan Cole tried to move forward with his life, though the memories of the war lingered. He found solace in sharing his experiences with others, especially young people eager to hear about space exploration. At the youth center, he became a mentor, teaching kids not just about flying, but also about responsibility and critical thinking. "The stars are beautiful," he told them one afternoon, "but they're also dangerous. If you ever get the chance to explore them, make sure you do it with your eyes wide open." His talks resonated deeply with the children, many of whom dreamed of becoming pilots or scientists. Ethan's honesty about the challenges he faced inspired them to think critically about their ambitions. He often reminded them that bravery wasn't just about taking risks. It was about knowing when to question authority and when to stand up for what was right. Jason Park threw himself into his work, determined to contribute to humanity's future in meaningful ways. His research focused on developing technologies that could facilitate peaceful interactions between species. One project involved creating advanced translation devices capable of interpreting complex languages in real time. Another explored sustainable methods for sharing resources across planets. Though progress was slow, Jason remained optimistic. "If we can build bridges instead of weapons," he often said, "then maybe we won't have to fight so much." Admiral Laura Bennett retired shortly after the mission, passing the torch to younger officers who shared her vision for a stronger, wiser military force. Before stepping down, she implemented sweeping reforms designed to prevent history from repeating itself. Intelligence units were expanded, training programs emphasized ethical decision-making, and alliances with other nations were strengthened to ensure unity in the face of future challenges. Her legacy lived on through the men and women she had mentored, all of whom carried pieces of her wisdom into their own careers. Captain Daniel Hayes struggled to adapt to the changes brought by the mission. Once celebrated as a bold leader, he now faced criticism for his role in pushing for total war without fully understanding the situation. Some accused him of prioritizing pride over caution, while others defended him as someone simply following orders. Over time, Hayes came to terms with his mistakes, acknowledging that leadership meant learning from failure. He took a quieter position within the military, focusing on strategy rather than action, and became an advocate for careful planning in all operations. Back on Zorath, the peace agreement held, for now. Both the Valens and the Krylos adhered to the terms outlined in the treaty, sharing resources and respecting boundaries. But tensions simmered beneath the surface. Old grudges didn't disappear overnight, and both sides remained wary of each other. Observers stationed on neutral moons monitored compliance, reporting back to Earth regularly. So far, there had been no major incidents, but everyone knew the truce was fragile. Kael'thar, the Valan leader, faced growing unrest among his people. Many resented him for involving humans in their war and feared retaliation from the Krylos. Others criticized him for agreeing to share resources, viewing it as a betrayal of their survival instincts. Despite the backlash, Kylthar stood firm, believing that cooperation was the only path forward. "We cannot undo the past," he told his advisors during one heated meeting. "But we can choose a different future, one where our children grow up without fear." Vorak, the Krylos envoy, faced similar challenges. His people were skeptical of the agreement, questioning whether the Valans could truly be trusted. Vorak addressed these concerns head-on, reminding his followers of the cost of endless war. "We have bled enough," he declared during a gathering of Krylos leaders. "Let us focus on rebuilding what we have lost. If the Valans break their word, we will respond, but let us give peace a chance first." On Earth, public opinion remained divided. Some viewed the Zorath mission as a necessary step in humanity's journey toward becoming a galactic power. Others saw it as a cautionary tale, warning against overreach and naivety. Debates raged in classrooms, living rooms, and online forums, with no clear consensus emerging. What everyone agreed on, however, was that the mission had changed humanity forever. For the first time, Earth had stepped onto the galactic stage, not as passive observers but as active participants. The experience had revealed both strengths and weaknesses, highlighting the importance of preparation, communication, and humility. Humanity had learned that the universe was vast and unpredictable, filled with wonders and dangers alike. And, while the road ahead would undoubtedly be challenging, there was hope that the lessons of Zorath would guide future generations. As Rachel gazed at the night sky one evening, she felt a quiet sense of satisfaction. The scars of the mission would always remain, but so would its achievements. Humanity had taken its first steps toward understanding its place in the cosmos, and though the journey was far from over, she believed it was worth pursuing. Ethan, too, looked up at the stars, this time with a sense of purpose. He no longer saw them as distant lights, but as symbols of possibility and responsibility. Jason smiled as he tested a prototype device, imagining how it might one day bridge gaps between worlds. Admiral Bennett reflected on her career, proud of the foundation she had laid for others to build upon. Even Captain Hayes found peace in knowing that he had grown wiser through adversity. In the end, the Zorath mission was neither a complete success nor a total failure. It was messy, complicated, and imperfect, just like humanity itself. But it proved something important, that even in the face of uncertainty and fear, courage and determination could lead to growth. As humanity prepared for whatever challenges lay ahead, it did so with clearer eyes and stronger hearts, ready to face the stars with both hope and caution. Ethan woke up early the next morning, his heart pounding with a mix of excitement and nerves. The sun hadn't even risen yet, but he could already hear the distant hum of activity at the spaceport. Today was the day he would step into the cockpit of the Starling and face the galaxy's greatest pilots. He took a deep breath and reminded himself why he was doing this. It wasn't just about proving himself. It was about showing everyone that humans were capable of more than they thought. After a quick breakfast, Ethan headed to his workshop. The Starling sat in the corner, its patched-up exterior looking worn but functional. Over the past few weeks, Ethan had poured his heart and soul into upgrading the ship. He had replaced the old engines with stronger ones scavenged from the junkyard, reinforced the hull with spare metal plates, and rewired the control panel to respond faster. It wasn't perfect, but it was the best he could do with limited resources. As he ran his hand along the side of the ship, he felt a surge of pride. This was his creation, his chance to make a difference. Maya arrived shortly after, carrying a small bag filled with tools and snacks. She smiled when she saw Ethan tinkering with the ship. "You look ready," she said, her voice warm and encouraging. Ethan nodded, though he still felt a knot of anxiety in his stomach. "I hope so," he replied. "But I won't lie. This is terrifying." Maya placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You've worked harder than anyone else for this. Just focus on what you've practiced and you'll be fine." Together, they went over the final preparations. Maya helped Ethan double-check the engine connections and test the ship's systems one last time. She also reviewed the race course map with him, pointing out areas where the asteroid field was especially dense or where gravitational anomalies might cause trouble. "Remember," she said, "don't try to keep up with the others at the start. Focus on staying steady and avoiding collisions. Speed will come later." As the morning wore on, the spaceport grew busier. Pilots from all over the galaxy began arriving, their sleek ships gleaming under the artificial lights. Some were surrounded by teams of engineers making last-minute adjustments, while others stood confidently near their vessels, chatting with reporters. Ethan couldn't help but feel out of place as he watched them. Their ships looked like works of art with smooth curves and glowing panels. Compared to the Starling, they seemed almost otherworldly. When Ethan rolled the Starling out of his workshop, a few nearby aliens stopped what they were doing to stare. One of them, a tall creature with shimmering scales, laughed openly. "Is that your ship?" he asked, pointing at the battered vessel. Ethan ignored him and continued toward the starting area. He knew the Starling wouldn't win any beauty contests, but he trusted that it would get the job done. At the starting line, Ethan parked the Starling alongside the other ships. The contrast was impossible to miss. While the other vessels sparkled with cutting-edge technology, the Starling looked like it belonged in a museum or a junkyard. A few pilots glanced at it curiously, while others smirked or whispered to each other. Cale Vorn, the reigning champion, walked over to Ethan with an amused expression. "Good luck, human," he said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "I hope you brought a repair kit. You're going to need it." Ethan forced a smile and nodded politely, refusing to let the comment bother him. As the countdown to the race began, Ethan climbed into the cockpit and strapped himself in. The interior of the Starling was cramped and smelled faintly of oil, but it felt familiar and comforting. He gripped the controls tightly, feeling the vibrations of the engine beneath his hands. Around him, the other pilots revved their engines, creating a deafening roar that echoed through the spaceport. Ethan took a deep breath and focused on the task ahead. He reminded himself of everything he had learned, every hour he had spent practicing late at night. This was his moment. The starting signal blared and the ships shot forward like streaks of light. Ethan lagged behind immediately, the Starling struggling to match the acceleration of the more advanced vessels. He gritted, his teeth, but stayed calm, remembering Maya's advice. "Don't rush," he muttered to himself. "Stay steady." Ahead of him, the asteroid field loomed, its jagged rocks spinning lazily in the void. The first challenge was navigating through a narrow gap between two massive asteroids. Most of the pilots zipped through effortlessly, their ships darting like lightning bolts. Ethan approached cautiously, carefully adjusting the Starling's trajectory to avoid scraping the edges. By the time he cleared the gap, several ships were far ahead of him. But Ethan didn't panic. He knew the real test would come later, when the course became more unpredictable. For now, his goal was to stay in the race and conserve energy. He kept his speed moderate, weaving through the obstacles with precision rather than haste. Occasionally he glanced at the monitors to check his position. He was near the back of the pack, but he wasn't out of the game yet. As the race progressed, the challenges grew tougher. The asteroid field became denser, forcing the pilots to make split-second decisions. Some took reckless risks, trying to shave seconds off their time by flying dangerously close to the rocks. Ethan stuck to his strategy, taking safer routes even if it meant falling further behind. He noticed that a few of the more aggressive pilots crashed into asteroids or collided with each other, eliminating themselves from the competition. Each time this happened, Ethan felt a flicker of hope. Patience might pay off after all. About halfway through the course, disaster struck for many of the remaining competitors. A sudden surge of gravity pulled several ships off course, sending them spiraling uncontrollably into the asteroids. Panic spread among the pilots, but Ethan remained focused. Drawing on his experience repairing ships, he quickly adjusted the Starling's stabilizers to counteract the gravitational pull. His hands moved instinctively over the controls, making tiny adjustments that kept the ship steady. Slowly but surely, he navigated through the chaos, avoiding collisions that could have ended his race. The crowd watching from the observation decks gasped as Ethan maneuvered through the turbulent section without incident. Even some of the other pilots glanced back in surprise, wondering how the human in the beat-up ship had managed to survive. Ethan allowed himself a small smile, but didn't let his guard down. There was still a long way to go, and the hardest part of the course lay ahead. By the time he reached the final stretch, only a handful of pilots remained. Kyle Vorn and Lyra Takai were still in the lead, their ships blazing trails of light through the asteroid field. Ethan trailed slightly behind them, but he was closing the gap. He remembered a shortcut Maya had mentioned during their training sessions, a narrow passage hidden behind a cluster of smaller asteroids. It was risky, but if he timed it right, it could give him the edge he needed. With determination burning in his chest, Ethan steered the Starling toward the shortcut. The opening was barely wide enough for the ship to fit through, and the surrounding rocks threatened to tear it apart. But Ethan didn't hesitate. He pushed the throttle forward, guiding the Starling with steady hands. For a moment, it felt like the ship might not make it, but then he burst through the other side, emerging ahead of Kale and Lyra. The roar of the crowd grew deafening as Ethan surged into the lead. The finish line was in sight, and he gave the Starling everything it had left. The engine groaned in protest, but it held together just long enough for Ethan to cross the line mere seconds before Kale. As the realization sank in, Ethan let out a whoop of joy. He had done it. Against all odds, he had won the Galactic Speed Trials. For a moment, there was silence. Then the cheers erupted, filling the spaceport with sound. Reporters rushed to interview Ethan, while former skeptics lined up to congratulate him. Even Kale Vorn approached him after the ceremony, extending a hand. "I underestimated you, human," he admitted grudgingly. "You've earned my respect." Ethan shook his hand, feeling a sense of accomplishment wash over him. He had proven that humans were capable of greatness even in a galaxy that doubted them. And he knew this was just the beginning. The moment Ethan crossed the finish line, his mind went blank. He sat in the cockpit of the Starling, staring at the blinking lights on the dashboard as the reality of what he had just done began to sink in. The roar of the crowd outside was deafening, but inside the ship, it felt strangely quiet. His hands were still gripping the controls tightly, his knuckles white from the effort. Slowly, he let go and leaned back in the seat, taking a deep breath. He had done it. Against all odds, he had won. Ethan climbed out of the Starling to find himself surrounded by reporters and spectators. Cameras flashed in his face, and microphones were thrust toward him from every direction. Questions came fast and loud, overlapping each other. "How did you do it?" one reporter shouted. "What's your secret?" another asked. Ethan raised his hands to shield his eyes from the bright lights and tried to answer as best he could. "I just focused on staying steady and avoiding mistakes," he said, his voice calm despite the chaos around him. "And I had a lot of help along the way." Maya pushed her way through the crowd, her blue hair bouncing as she hurried to Ethan's side. Her face was glowing with pride, and she threw her arms around him in a tight hug. "You did it," she exclaimed, pulling back to look at him. "I knew you could." Ethan smiled, feeling a lump rise in his throat. He had never imagined that anyone would believe in him the way Maya did. "Thanks to you too," he said softly. "I couldn't have done this without your help." As the initial excitement died down, Ethan was ushered to a stage where the winners were announced officially. Kale Vorn and Lyra Takai stood beside him, their expressions unreadable. Ethan glanced at them nervously, wondering if they were angry or disappointed. But when Kale stepped forward to shake his hand, there was no trace of mockery in his eyes. "Good race," Kale said simply, his tone respectful. Lyra nodded in agreement, offering Ethan a small smile. "You earned it," she added. Ethan felt a wave of relief wash over him. Winning wasn't just about proving himself, it was also about earning the respect of those who had doubted him. After the ceremony, Ethan returned to the spaceport where his coworkers were waiting for him. The same aliens who had laughed at him before now greeted him with applause and cheers. The tall green-skinned alien with 4 arms approached him, looking sheepish. "I guess we were wrong about you, Ethan," he admitted, scratching the back of his neck. "That was incredible. Ethan chuckled, feeling a sense of satisfaction. "Thanks," he replied. "But remember, I didn't do it alone. I had a lot of support." Later that evening, Ethan found himself sitting alone in his workshop, staring at the Starling. The ship was battered and scratched from the race, but to Ethan it had never looked more beautiful. It was a symbol of everything he had overcome, the doubts, the laughter, the challenges. He ran his hand along its side, thinking about how far he had come since he first signed up for the Galactic speed trials. Back then, he had been an outsider, someone no one took seriously. Now, he was a champion. Maya joined him a short while, later carrying 2 cups of steaming tea. She handed one to Ethan and sat down beside him. "So," she said, breaking the silence, "what's next for you?" Ethan sipped his tea thoughtfully. He hadn't really considered what would come after the race. All his energy had been focused on winning. But now that he had achieved his goal, he realized there was so much more he could do. "I don't know yet," he admitted, "but I think this is just the beginning. If a human like me can win a race like this, maybe others will start to see us differently." Maya nodded, her expression thoughtful. "You've already made a big impact," she said. "People are talking about you everywhere. They're saying humans might be worth paying attention to after all." Ethan smiled, feeling a flicker of hope. For years, humans had been seen as outsiders in the galaxy, dismissed as primitive or weak. But now, thanks to Ethan's victory, that perception was starting to change. Maybe this was the chance for humanity to step out of the shadows and take its place among the stars. Over the next few days, Ethan became a celebrity. News outlets across the galaxy covered his story, highlighting how a simple mechanic from Earth had beaten the best pilots in the universe. Invitations poured in from all corners of Zentrix 7 and beyond. Some were offers to sponsor him in future races, while others were requests for interviews or public appearances. Ethan accepted a few of them, wanting to share his message of determination and resilience. But he turned down most of the offers, knowing he needed time to process everything that had happened. One invitation, however, caught his attention. It came from a group of scientists who were working on developing new technologies for intergalactic travel. They wanted to meet with Ethan to discuss his experience racing the Starling and see if any of his modifications could be applied to their projects. Intrigued, Ethan agreed to visit their lab. When he arrived, he was greeted by a team of enthusiastic researchers eager to learn from him. They examined the Starling closely, marveling at the ingenuity of Ethan's upgrades. "You've done something truly remarkable here," one of them said, pointing to the reinforced hull. "This kind of innovation could inspire new designs for ships everywhere." Ethan left the lab feeling inspired himself. He had always loved tinkering with machines, but he had never imagined his work could have such a wide-reaching impact. The idea of contributing to advancements in technology excited him. Maybe this was another way he could make a difference, not just for humans, but for everyone in the galaxy. As the weeks passed, life began to settle into a new rhythm for Ethan. He continued working at the spaceport, but now people treated him with respect instead of ridicule. His co-workers sought his advice on repairs and modifications, recognizing his skill and creativity. Strangers stopped him on the street to congratulate him or ask for tips on racing. Even aliens who had once mocked him now greeted him warmly. Ethan appreciated the change, but he didn't let it go to his head. He remained humble, knowing that his success was built on hard work and perseverance. One evening, as Ethan gazed at the stars beyond Zentrix 7, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. Winning the Galactic speed trials had been a dream come true, but it was also a stepping stone to something greater. If a human flying a patched-up ship could shatter records and change perceptions, what else might humans accomplish? The possibilities seemed endless. Ethan's thoughts drifted to Earth, the planet he had left behind years ago. He wondered how people there would react to his victory. Would they feel proud? Inspired? He hoped so. More than anything, he wanted his achievement to remind them that humans were capable of greatness no matter where they came from or what obstacles they faced. The laughter had faded, replaced by admiration and perhaps a little awe. And for Ethan, that was enough. Ethan's victory in the galactic speed trials wasn't just a personal triumph. It sparked a ripple effect across Zentrix 7 and beyond. The story of how a human mechanic with an outdated ship had beaten the galaxy's elite pilots spread like wildfire. News channels replayed footage of Ethan crossing the finish line over and over, highlighting his calm determination and clever maneuvers. People who had once dismissed humans as clumsy or unremarkable now found themselves talking about Ethan Cole with admiration. For the first time, humanity was being seen not as a weak species, but as one full of potential. Back at the spaceport, Ethan's life had changed dramatically. His co-workers no longer laughed at him. Instead, they looked up to him. Some even asked for advice on their own projects, believing that Ethan's ingenuity could help them improve their work. "You've got a gift," one of them said while handing him a broken engine component. "Can you take a look at this?" Ethan smiled, happy to help, though he sometimes felt overwhelmed by all the attention. He hadn't entered the race to become famous. He just wanted to prove himself. But now that he had done so, he realized he had a responsibility to use his newfound influence wisely. The invitations kept coming. Scientists, engineers, and inventors from across the galaxy reached out to Ethan, eager to learn more about his methods. They were fascinated by the modifications he had made to the Starling and wanted to apply similar ideas to their own designs. One day, Ethan received a message from a research team working on advanced navigation systems. They invited him to visit their lab, explaining that they believed his approach to problem-solving could inspire breakthroughs in interstellar travel. Intrigued, Ethan accepted. When Ethan arrived at the lab, he was greeted by a group of enthusiastic researchers. They led him through rows of high-tech equipment and glowing monitors, pointing out various experiments in progress. At the center of the room sat a sleek prototype ship, its surface shimmering like liquid metal. "This is our latest project," one of the scientists explained. "We're trying to create a vessel that can adapt to unpredictable conditions, like the ones you faced during the race." Ethan nodded thoughtfully, remembering the chaotic gravitational shifts in the asteroid field. The researchers spent hours asking Ethan questions about the Starling. They examined every inch of the ship, marveling at how he had managed to make it competitive despite its limitations. "Your stabilizer adjustments are genius," one of them said, pointing to the reinforced panels Ethan had added. "This kind of innovation could revolutionize how we design ships." Ethan listened quietly, feeling both proud and humbled. He had never imagined that his work would have such an impact. It made him wonder what else humans might contribute if given the chance. After leaving the lab, Ethan began thinking more deeply about the future. Winning the race had opened doors he hadn't even known existed. He started considering ways he could use his skills to benefit others, not just humans, but everyone in the galaxy. He remembered Maya's words, "If a human like you can win, maybe others will start to see us differently." Those words stuck with him, motivating him to keep pushing forward. One evening, as Ethan sat in his workshop tinkering with the Starling, Maya stopped by. She brought along a plate of snacks and plopped down beside him. "So," she said, popping a piece of fruit into her mouth, "what's your next big plan?" Ethan paused, wiping grease from his hands. "I'm not sure yet," he admitted. "But I know I want to do something meaningful, something that helps people." Maya tilted her head, her blue hair catching the light. "You already are helping people," she said. "Just by existing and succeeding, you're changing how others see humans. But if you're looking for something bigger..." She trailed off, thinking. Then her eyes lit up. "What about teaching? You could share your knowledge with others. Show them what you've learned." The idea struck Ethan as brilliant. Teaching had never crossed his mind before, but it made perfect sense. If he could pass on his skills and experiences, he could inspire others to believe in themselves the way he had come to believe in his own abilities. "That's a great idea," he said, smiling. "But where do I start?" Maya grinned. "Leave that to me," she replied. Over the next few days, she helped Ethan organize a series of workshops at the spaceport. Word quickly spread, and soon aliens of all kinds began showing up to learn from the human who had shattered records. Ethan taught them everything he knew. How to repair engines, modify controls, and think creatively when solving problems. He emphasized patience and persistence, sharing stories of his struggles and how he had overcome them. To his surprise, the classes were a hit. Students left each session buzzing with excitement, eager to try out what they had learned. As the weeks went by, Ethan noticed a shift in the atmosphere at the spaceport. More humans began arriving, curious about the workshops and inspired by Ethan's success. Some were mechanics like him, while others were pilots or engineers. They came from different parts of the galaxy, united by a shared desire to prove themselves. Ethan welcomed them warmly, offering guidance and encouragement whenever he could. Slowly but surely, a community began to form, a network of humans determined to show the galaxy what they were capable of. Despite his growing popularity, Ethan remained grounded. He continued working on the Starling, always looking for ways to improve it. Even after winning the race, he refused to rest on his laurels. "There's always room for improvement," he told Maya one afternoon as they worked together in the HFY workshop. She laughed, shaking her head. "You're impossible," she teased. "Most people would be satisfied with breaking a galactic record. But you're still tinkering." Ethan shrugged, tightening a bolt on the Starling's engine. "Satisfaction doesn't mean stopping," he said. "It means keeping going, finding new challenges to tackle." And he meant it. While he was proud of what he had accomplished, he knew there was still so much more to achieve. The galaxy was vast, filled with opportunities to explore and innovate. He didn't want to waste a single one. One day, Ethan received an unexpected invitation. It came from a prestigious academy on another planet, known for training some of the best pilots in the universe. The letter praised Ethan's performance in the galactic speed trials and asked if he would consider joining their faculty as a guest instructor. At first, Ethan hesitated. He had never considered himself a teacher, let alone someone qualified to train elite pilots, but Maya encouraged him to take the opportunity. "You'll be amazing," she said firmly. "Besides, imagine the difference you could make." With Maya's support, Ethan agreed to visit the academy. When he arrived, he was greeted by students who were eager to meet the human who had beaten Kale Vorn and Lyra Takai. They bombarded him with questions, wanting to know his secrets and strategies. Ethan answered honestly, sharing not only his technical knowledge but also his philosophy of perseverance and hard work. "Success isn't about having the best tools," he told them during one lecture. "It's about making the most of what you have and refusing to give up, no matter how tough things get." The students responded enthusiastically, hanging on his every word. Many of them approached him after class to thank him, saying his lessons had inspired them to push harder and aim higher. Ethan felt a deep sense of fulfillment knowing he was making a difference. Teaching wasn't just about passing on information. It was about empowering others to believe in themselves. By the time Ethan returned to Zentrix 7, he had gained a new perspective on his role in the galaxy. Winning the race had been a milestone, but it was only the beginning. Through his workshops and teaching, he was helping to build a brighter future, not just for humans, but for everyone. The laughter and ridicule he had endured in the past seemed distant now, replaced by respect and admiration. Late one night, as Ethan stood outside his workshop gazing at the stars, he felt a profound sense of gratitude. He thought about how far he had come from being an outsider to becoming a symbol of hope and possibility. The galaxy was still full of challenges, but Ethan was ready to face them. With determination and courage, he knew anything was possible. And as he looked up at the endless expanse of space, he couldn't wait to see what adventures lay ahead. Ethan's journey had taken him farther than he ever imagined, but it wasn't just about his personal achievements anymore. The galaxy was changing, and he could feel it in the air. Humans, once dismissed as primitive or weak, were starting to gain recognition, not because of Ethan alone, but because of the ripple effect his victory had created. People everywhere were beginning to see humans in a new light, not just as outsiders, but as contributors, innovators, and equals. Back on Zentrix 7, Ethan continued teaching and mentoring others. His workshops at the spaceport had grown into a thriving program, attracting students from across the galaxy. Mechanics, pilots, engineers, and even inventors came to learn from him, eager to absorb his knowledge and adopt his mindset. Ethan didn't just teach them how to fix engines or modify ships. He taught them how to think creatively, solve problems, and persevere through challenges. Success isn't about talent, he often said during his lessons. It's about effort and determination. You can achieve anything if you're willing to work for it. The students who passed through Ethan's program went on to make their own contributions. Some returned to their home planets to share what they had learned, spreading Ethan's teachings far and wide. Others stayed on Zentrix 7, joining the growing community of humans who were making a name for themselves in the galaxy. Together, they formed a network of innovation and collaboration, proving that humanity had much to offer. One day, while Ethan was working in his workshop, Maya arrived with exciting news. "You've been invited to speak at the Intergalactic Council," she announced, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Ethan froze, his wrench halfway to the Starling's engine. "The Council?" he repeated, stunned. "Why would they want me?" Maya grinned, clearly enjoying his reaction. "Because of everything you've done," she explained. "Your victory in the race showed everyone what humans are capable of. Now they want to hear your thoughts on how to include more species in galactic advancements." Ethan shook his head, still trying to process the idea. Speaking at the council was an enormous honor, one reserved for leaders, scientists, and influential figures. He wasn't sure he belonged in that group. "You'll be amazing," Maya assured him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Just be yourself. Share your story, that's all they want to hear." After some hesitation, Ethan agreed to accept the invitation. The thought of addressing the council made him nervous, but he knew it was an opportunity to advocate for humanity and for all underrepresented species in the galaxy. If he could inspire even one person to believe in their potential, it would be worth it. On the day of the meeting, Ethan stood outside the council chamber, taking deep breaths to calm his nerves. The room was filled with representatives from countless planets, each speaking for their species. As Ethan took his place at the podium, the room fell silent. For a moment, he felt overwhelmed by the weight of the moment. Then he remembered why he was there, to share his message of hope and possibility. "Thank you for inviting me here today," he began, his voice steady despite the knot in his stomach. "I'm not a politician or a scientist, I'm just a mechanic from Earth. But my story is proof that no matter where you come from or what others think of you, you can achieve great things if you refuse to give up." He went on to describe his journey, the laughter he had faced, the doubts he had overcome, and the hard work that had led to his victory. He talked about the importance of diversity and inclusion, emphasizing that every species had unique strengths to contribute. "We're stronger together," he said, looking around the room. "When we embrace our differences and work as a team, we can accomplish incredible things." By the time Ethan finished speaking, the room erupted in applause. Representatives from every corner of the galaxy rose to their feet, cheering for the human who had inspired them all. Ethan stepped back from the podium, feeling a mix of pride and humility. He hadn't expected such a warm reception, but it reinforced his belief that change was possible. In the weeks that followed, Ethan noticed a shift in the galaxy's attitude toward humans. More opportunities opened up for them: jobs, research, grants, invitations to collaborate on projects. Humans were no longer seen as outsiders. They were becoming active participants in shaping the future. Ethan played a key role in this transformation, using his platform to advocate for equality and cooperation. He traveled to different planets, giving speeches and meeting with leaders to discuss ways to promote unity among species. Despite his growing fame, Ethan remained humble. He continued teaching and working on the Starling, always seeking ways to improve. "There's still so much to learn," he told Maya one evening as they sat together watching the stars. Winning the race was just the beginning. Maya smiled, leaning back against the wall. "You've already done so much," she said, "but I know you won't stop until the galaxy is a better place." Ethan chuckled, nodding in agreement. "That's the plan," he said. and I have a feeling it's going to take a lifetime. As the years passed, Ethan's influence only grew. His workshops expanded into a formal academy, training generations of mechanics, pilots, and engineers. Many of his former students went on to achieve greatness, carrying forward the lessons they had learned from him. The starling became a symbol of resilience and ingenuity, displayed in museums and studied by aspiring inventors. Even Kale Vorn and Lyra Takai, once his rivals, became allies, working alongside him on projects to improve interstellar travel. Ethan never forgot where he came from. He kept in touch with his roots, visiting Earth whenever he could. Each time he returned, he saw progress, a new invention, a breakthrough in technology, or simply a child dreaming of exploring the stars. It reminded him of his own childhood, when he had looked up at the night sky and wondered what lay beyond. Now, thanks to his efforts, humans were reaching for those stars in ways they had never dreamed possible. One evening, as Ethan stood on a hill overlooking Earth's glowing cities, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The laughter and ridicule he had endured in the past seemed like distant memories now. In their place was admiration, respect, and a legacy that would last for generations. He had proven that humans were capable of greatness, not just to the galaxy but to themselves. The road ahead was still long, filled with challenges and uncertainties. But Ethan was ready. With determination and courage, he knew anything was possible. As he gazed at the endless expanse of stars, he couldn't wait to see what adventures lay ahead, for himself, for humanity, and for the galaxy.